We hear about plastic pollution and plastic waste so much, and not always in the context of climate change. But obviously, plastic production, transportation, etc., are part of the emissions story, and we have to worry about it because even though we don't know, we don't have a lot of papers looking at the impact of all this plastic pollution, especially on in the ocean, on climate. Even though some new studies are coming out, they have, people have looked at the impact on ecology, how various marine animals get stuck in plastic or even on land and so on and so forth. This is a nice paper, again, has lots of details that are beyond my capabilities, but I am going to introduce that topic to you because it's a very important topic. They do some modeling and future scenarios to suggest things as pathways to reduce global plastic waste mismanagement and greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. What is it about? Plastic production and plastic pollution negatively affect our environment, environmental justice, and climate change. Using detailed global and regional plastic datasets coupled with socioeconomic data, we employ machine learning to predict that without intervention, annual mismanaged plastic waste will nearly double to 120 million tons with a range by 2050. Annual greenhouse gas emissions from the plastic system are projected to grow by 37% to 3.35 gigaton CO2 equivalent over the same period. So it's non-CO2 greenhouse gases converted to CO2 equivalent using green global warming potential and so on, which we have discussed elsewhere. The United Nations Plastic Pollution Treaty presents a unique opportunity to reshape these outcomes. We simulate 8 candidate treaty policies and find that just 4 could together reduce mismanaged plastic waste by 91% and gross plastic-related greenhouse gas emissions by 1/3. So that's good news that we have the policies needed already. It's just about implementing them. And just to show from the Our World in data on global plastics pollution, annual production of polymer, resin, and fiber has grown exponentially, super exponentially, with dips for financial crises and so on. And COVID may have even had a negative impact because everybody was restricted, travel was restricted, everybody was ordering things from outside, and packaging, right? Lots of things come in plastic, irrecyclable plastic many times, and so on. Momentum has grown recently to preserve the constructive benefits of plastic while eliminating negative externalities such as waste. Perhaps most consequentially, in 2022, a resolution was adopted to begin developing an international, legally binding United Nations treaty to curb plastic pollution. To contribute, we developed a model that utilizes machine learning to forecast trends in global production, use, and fate of all plastics to 2050. We used the model to simulate the impact that 8 policy interventions may have in isolation and when combined upon the global mismanaged plastic waste and plastic associated greenhouse gas emissions. They are recycled content mandate, virgin plastic production cap, and investment in waste management infrastructure or recycling infrastructure, recycling rate mandate, packaging tax, reduction in single-use packaging, and packaging reuse mandate. Okay, we provide open source interactive software which allows for additional flexible exploration of candidate policy intervention, so they offer you a way to go and play with it yourself. This work builds from and adds to important prior modeling efforts that are there in references 24 to 26 that you can follow up on. Here is some depiction of what we are having. So here is consumption, the different regions, and what happens at the end of life, and where they belong in the the policy that we just mentioned. Packaging, construction, textile, house, lace and sport, leisure and sport, electronic, transportation, other, and in agriculture. So the numbers go from 0 to 750 million tons here. So packaging is 219 at the largest, construction, textile, and so on, right? So they have links to majority of the world with 251 million tons in consumption and 222 million tons of waste. This has to change. North America, China, and Europe, of course, and we'll see a map in a minute. Maybe I removed the map, but doesn't matter. People look at waste per capita and which country is putting the most into the ocean and so on. Surprisingly, it's not related to wealth, because Philippines puts a lot of waste into the ocean. It's an island state, but also it's exporting a lot. So when you count plastic waste, you have to see whether it's at the production end or the consumption end. If some company is producing chips and exporting everywhere, and the chips bags are thrown everywhere, whose responsibility is it, right? And how do you count it? So end of life, a lot of it ends up in landfill. There is incineration and recycling, which is much smaller than these amounts and simply mismanaged. So if you look at the policies, then you have recycled content, cap virgin plastic to 2020, 50 billion waste investment needed, 100 billion recycling investment, 40% recycled rate, packaging consumption tax, reduce single-use plastic, packaging reuse, and so on. And they show percentages here as caption 2050 global plastics projections. It's a mistake, their caption. Overall, mass of plastics in millions of metric tons predicted in 2050 to be consumed in 8 global sectors, in 4 world regions, and in 4 end-of-life fates. Estimated impact of 8 policy interventions on reducing mass of mismanaged plastic waste and associated greenhouse gas emissions in millions of metric tons of CO2 equivalent by 2050. Outcomes are depicted here for when all 8 policies are implemented at the same time and include projected interactions between these policies in their modeling, AI/ML modeling. The next is about looking at the policy packages, as they say. So business as usual with managed waste primary production of plastic and gross greenhouse gas emissions. Here again, mass in millions of tons, and here you are going with the 3 scenarios for the policy packages. So 40% recycled content. So let's look at the color codes first. So projected impacts of potential policies, projected impacts of 8 policies under consideration in the UN Plastics Treaty on mismanaged plastic waste, plastic production, primary and secondary, and gross plastic related greenhouse gas emissions are shown. The impact of each policy is measured relative to business as usual in 2050 if we don't do anything. Bars show the best assumption parameters as indicated in our online tool, where while lines at the top of those bars show 95% confidence interval from Monte Carlo. So you make repeated simulations, so 500 trials per policy. So you get a range of possibilities. Policies tested include requiring a minimum of 40% recycled plastic content, capping global virgin plastic production at 2020 levels, investing 50 billion in waste management infrastructure, instituting a tax on plastic packaging, investing 100 billion total in recycling infrastructure, mandating a 40% rate of plastic waste collection for recycling, reducing single-use plastic packaging, and requiring a minimum of 80% reuse rate for all plastic packaging. I'm reading them off again so that you have in your mind what are the policy options being considered in the agreement. One of many possible policy packages is considered here that combines the impact of 4 such policies. So 40% recycled content, 2020 virgin production cap, 50 billion waste management investment, and a plastic packaging tax. While taking into account their interactions, collectively, this policy package is projected to reduce mismanaged plastic waste by approximately 91%, as we said, and greenhouse gas emissions by 1/3 by 2050 compared to business as usual. Okay, so these are the policy packages here, and you can see this is the recycled content include so there are various details that I'm going to skip, but you understand what we mean, right? So primary, so these are the colors: mismanaged waste, primary production, gross greenhouse gases, and how they will respond to different policies and policy packages. This is the policy package here, okay? So individual and then for policy package. So they have somehow found the optimum policy package that can work best. So when you have many rules, there are also many loopholes. So people will always find ways to skip things. But if you have a package that works best and it's sold as one regulation to be followed, then maybe it will work better. What are the conclusions? These results suggest that it is possible to substantially reduce plastic waste management, one of the grand environmental changes of the modern era. However, it's also sobering and instructive to consider the robustness of the policy package required to achieve such a result. We acknowledge that there is uncertainty in our database, in addition to the modeling uncertainty that we attempt to quantify. Also lacking robust regional landfill, recycling and formal incineration rates at sector level, we must assume that intra-regional waste fate propensities are the same across all sectors, so in each country or whatever. Measures under discussion in the UN treaty that would improve data disclosure and reporting could reduce these gaps. So monitoring, evaluation, reporting are going to be critical for implementing these policies. We also note that our model assumes successful implementation of the policies, full implementation for all. Should compliance be low, then higher ambition would be required to generate equivalent treaty impacts, of course. Even so, our business as usual forecasts highlight just how large the mismanaged plastic waste problem will grow without intervention. Importantly, the burden of this unmitigated growth of plastic waste will be inequitably placed upon the world's least wealthy countries who consume the least amount of plastic per capita, but how they waste it is different than consumption, unfortunately. We observe great variation in the forecasted impact of different policies upon reducing mismanaged plastic waste. Minimum recycled content mandates, investment in waste management, caps to virgin production or new production, and a packaging consumption tax will have outsized effects both individually but especially in combination. The policy package we model that includes these four policies reduce waste mismanagement to very low levels, as we saw here. You can see that each one of them has high confidence in terms of where the 95% confidence limits are, but remember that we still have to think about equity, justice, and so on when we implement these policies. If poor people are relying on plastic for survival, because often you buy things in reused plastic, it may be safe or not. They use many things, whether they are leaching or not. So they are not doing it to recycle per se, but because they cannot afford to buy new things all the time. Plastic water bottles, plastic packaging and so on. They use newspapers as well, with the inks pouring over all the food they package in the newspapers and so on and so forth. So there are always equity issues we have to worry about. I missed something here. I think let me just leave it here, okay? So I was trying to decide which one to report and which one not, so I will just leave it there. Okay, we got the main messages in anyways. Okay, see you in the next topic, which will be about whether the warming is really accelerating or not. This is another topic where there is some controversy about whether, global warming is happening, no doubt, but is it accelerating? Does the data say that it's accelerating? We'll look at one paper that says that it hasn't been accelerating since the 70s. Interesting, right? So see you. Actually, I should mention the last bit that I was lazy about because I misplaced one piece of it, but that is about the emissions. We said how to reduce emissions along with plastic waste by 2050, so that point should be emphasized here. So, in business as usual, where you end up in terms of greenhouse gas emissions versus what each policy does for greenhouse gas emissions by managing plastic, either with recycling it or restricting virgin plastic production or waste management and so on and so forth, recycling, etc. And they look at which policies help the best. We said 1/3 of the emissions would be reduced, so that was what this missed comment was about. But here, collectively, these observations provide timely insight into how to maximize the impact of the UN Plastic Pollution Treaty, both as it is being drafted and over the longer time horizon of its implementation. It is clear from these results that with sufficient political will, there is enough technical potential to dramatically reduce mismanaged plastic waste and meaningfully address some of the more insidious associated issues. Finally, this effort also showcases a general methodological approach by which policies can be openly and flexibly tested via interactive simulation to guide and strengthen environmental decision making in other important contexts. The co-benefits of plastic waste management also, of course, will go to the microplastic, nanoplastic problem we are having. We are finding plastic in human blood, human brain, digestive system, dog brains, and so on and so forth. Obviously, externalities include the co-benefits on health as well. So now we can leave it here and move to the next topic. Okay.